So what have you been up to?
Just like I said, just working, man. I only got even out into the woods, like maybe a couple times in the spring, searching for sheds.
Yeah.
And did one big giant scouting session, and that was it, man.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Did you do any turkey hunting this season?
I'm not a big turkey hunter, man. I went out a couple years in a row, and it was just one of those. I was on birds every time.
Yeah.
I just couldn't get them to break that you're at 70 yards, I won't come any closer, and it was just too frustrating for me. Where I was just like, you know what, up these birds.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so you only got out to the woods once so far this year to kind of look for sheds. I suck at looking for sheds. Are you any good at it?
Last year I found 10, and that was all in like a span of a week. This year I found 2, and I went out, like I said, 2 sessions. One was a real big session with a group of buddies of mine from southeastern PA. They hunt Jersey a lot, and I brought them up to my area, and we walked probably 6 to 8 miles that day and found 2 sheds. That was it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's real thick, nasty stuff. We were on the perfect spot too. We were on the south side of the mountain where the sun hits, and it was just a very, very nice day out, but didn't strike any white gold.
So, yeah. Is that where you're looking for them? Is like kind of like in big wood settings, or I guess if you don't have any like farm fields and stuff?
Yeah, I don't really hunt near farms, so it's like, you climb mine ground is where I hunt. So
yeah, nice. Hey, so I guess what's new with me here is I guess this year I took my kayak out, and I had a little trolling motor for it, and I took it out in conditions that I live near a pretty big lake, and I didn't realize how choppy it got. I ended up flipping my kayak and like losing the battery and all my stuff. And I sank 6 of my cameras I was going to put out there. So I was like, I got home and I sank my kayak, and I was like, you know what? I was like, and I even had to like call 911 because I was trying to get the kayak out of the water, and the handle broke and the screws came up and slid on my fingers. So then I'm getting out my phone to try to call someone to come help me, but like my phone's wet. So then like the only button that works is the one on the side. And
emergency one.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like you press that, you think like somebody's going to come help you, but like I had them transmitted with like Fish and Game, and I sat there for an hour and a half, like with my hands wrapped up in like my shirt and stuff. And they're like,
yeah,
hey, and it was like a 5 mile ruck around to my truck, but they patrol that water there and like look for drunk boaters and stuff. So I figured, hey, maybe they'll swing by, just grab me, give me a ride to my truck. No, they drove to the road. I mean, nice guy, but they drove to the road that was like 1.5 miles, 2 miles away. It was like, can you just meet us at this road? And I was like, yeah, I guess so. I was like, I could have just done this on my own an hour and a half ago,
Yeah.
But I mean, long story short for that is like, I really should have listened to my intuition, but the silver line that came out of it is I just made the decision and bought a little John boat. So I want to try using that for water access this year, which I've never done before. And I've tried it with my kayak, but it was just so much work that like it wasn't worth it. So I would really like to kill one and put it in a boat this year and see what that's like.
Well, I mean, water access is really great because one, you're going to be a hell of a lot more silent coming in, and all your thermals and everything's going to be pulling towards the water. So you're basically coming in as a ghost unless they're standing on the bank looking at you.
Yeah.
I did water access 2 seasons ago, and I got in there, like I said, invisible. I had to cross the one river around here. It splits in 2 places. There's like a small little island in it. So I'd have to cross 2 sections of the river to get over to the opposite bank. And it was perfect setup. The wind would pull right towards the river that flows into a dam. And the deer would be coming down towards the river because that was the only water available in the area.
Right.
So, but I saw a good amount of deer, and we had some really great deer on camera. I didn't get a shot or get a kill, but still, great theory, great spot. Just had to put more time in it. Unfortunately, it got leased up, so there's no more of that.
Yeah, for me, I think the difficult part is like, from hunting one way for so long and then kind of like trying to look at a map and figure out like what terrain features, like where I could land a boat and like be on deer, like why they would be back there. You know what I mean?
You just have to. It's one of those deals you're just gonna have to put the time in, and it's gonna be trial and error.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There is one spot that I think like would be a good kill spot. It just depends on if there's like a good buck in there or not. And it's basically like a steep cliffside kind of on one side, and then a flat area on the water side, and then that kind of empties out into like an ag field. So man, I was thinking if they walk across that the flat area or the military crest of that field, I could basically just take my boat up there. If I pre-hung a stand, get right out of the boat, 30 yards out of the boat and be in a stand like in that pinch point right there.
Yeah, lickety split. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you said it. As long as there's evidence of a good buck in there, go for it. And a lot of people don't realize that either. It could look like the best buck in the world, but if
yeah,
doesn't mean there's always a giant buck in there or a buck at a caliber you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, this year I'm trying something different. At first I didn't know I was going to have to go on a work trip and be gone most of the summer. But I had already decided in late May that I'm going to start putting my cameras out, because I realized that, I don't know if you're familiar with like the Reveal Tacticam cameras at all, but
yep, I have them.
Yeah, you could put them out, turn them on, and then just keep your plant suspended. And then just when you turn it on, it'll just start sending you pictures in. So I just went ahead and start putting all my cameras out before it gets, usually I do it in July or August, but by then it's so hot that like, after you walk a couple of miles, you're like, oh my God, I might have a heat stroke back here.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah. I honestly, the reason why I wait till August to do mine is because one, it's less intrusion.
Yeah.
And the longer they're up, the more chance you have somebody stumbling upon them.
Yes.
So
cool.
That's why I wait till the last second. I already know where I'm hunting this year. Last year, I think I felt that was spread out too thin over the last couple of years. So I kind of like narrowed down my hunting area. I'm just going to focus on this one ridge line that's a couple miles long. And I'm just going to focus on there because I've had numerous run-ins with giants and, great deer there year in and year out. It just seems like I'm always a day or two off, or, it's, of when it gets really hot in those spots.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just going to say, screw it. Use all my tactic cams on that same ridge and just focus on that ridge this year.
That's a good idea. I think I've been doing the same thing, because I've been trying to cast like a wide net, but the problem is then like this is a problem I've had like the past 2 years that I know it's my problem, and I really need to break myself of it, and I'm going to try my hardest this year. Is just like chasing pictures, because I'll have this huge net spread of like 4 different public land areas, like 30,000 acres or whatever. And then every time I get a good buck on one of the camera, I'm just jumping that spot and then jumping to the next spot and then jumping the next ones, which I don't know. I always thought could be good, because it's like, first sit's like the best sit and whatever. But at the same time, I don't think that I'm giving the spots enough time to like develop and like really see what's really in the area, get to know them and stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes you could just sit in an area. I know guys that sit in the same spot 2 or 3 days in a row, as long as it's hot, as long as deer are there, they don't leave it, Yeah. And I think I was like you, just jumping the gun, be like, all right, on to the next spot. I didn't see what I wanted today, so I'm going to go to the next spot instead of giving that other spot, the spot that I had been in, a better chance.
And if I remember right, you're like hills, mountains, big woods, right? Yeah, and I'm not in the mountains, but Kentucky has some pretty big hills, and it's the places where I hunt are all big woods, and I just don't see, like in the more ag central environments, like bed to food and stuff, I don't see my deer like on a strict pattern like that. I think I don't think that they do the same thing every day. You know, I think they're more like roaming around, like maybe coming by your spot, whatever, once every 3 to 5 days or something. I just don't.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. It depends. Like sometimes early in the season, you can get them on a more strict pattern.
Yeah.
Before the pressure hits. Once the pressure hits, it's kind of up in the air. Like they alter their movements, they push back away from the pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you got to assess that and be ready to make an adjustment on the fly for that. But to be honest, I said usually when you have agriculture involved, if you can get on a strict bed to feeding pattern, but like you said, right now you're not, you know, you haven't been seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
So you also got to take into factor what your mass crop is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that could definitely affect the bed to feeding pattern with agriculture, because there's a lot of shit that drops in the woods that they'll forego, you know, the farm crops and feast on the mass crop. So you really gotta, you know what's in here as well as that.
Yeah, that's another thing I kind of need to get better at, is just like just like the browse and like forage stuff, because you know, like once
ID, woodsmanship, identification.
Yeah, I mean once they do push off the fields, and I always have my cameras set, you know, in the areas that I expect them to move to, not like where they are, because that to me, that early season is so short before the pressure hits and they change their range and stuff, that to me it's not worth it to start moving my cameras around. And I've never had that much luck with the early season. I would like to kill an early season, but it seems to me it's like you're gonna set up on food or bed to food, the travel route right there, but it's not like, you know, it's just so much more of like deeper into the woods, and like terrain features and stuff and scrapes and stuff is more what I'm interested in, the stuff that they're going to use the majority of the season, or be able to find them at least.
Yeah, understandable.
Yeah. So are you you got any kind of plans this year is different? Are you trying any different tactics or anything, you think?
Honestly, like I said, I'm just going to try and focus in on this one area. I said I call it Scrape City. I've been hunting for years. It's a section of the mountain. It's a ridge line that, you know, I usually camera it up pretty heavy, and I said giants coming through every year. I gotta really, I guess, button down on it. You know, last year I was mainly working day shift, which kind of hindered me. Normally I'm a second shift worker, so I hunt every morning.
Right.
And I truly feel that had I been a day shift or a second shift worker last year, I would have killed a buck that's about 150 inches, because he showed himself in daylight the first 2 weeks of archery season pretty regularly.
Right.
And you know, it's just one of those deals there. If I had the time and I put more time into it, I think I could have got it done. But you know, I had to make deal with what I had with work and everything. So
yeah, and
I felt I spread myself too thin too. That was another thing. Like I said, I was jumping from spot to spot to spot to spot to spot rather than putting a lot of time into one area.
Yeah. Are you for that, since you're going to be hunting the same basic area more, are you going to put some presets up? Or are you going to run a gun every time?
I'm gonna run and gun every time. I have my trees picked out where I'm gonna be.
Okay.
But I won't put any permanent sets out anymore, because like I said, that's giving you away to every other Tom, Dick, and Harry that's gonna be in the woods.
Yeah, it's true. Mm-hmm.
That's one big thing in my area, is that, you know, the people pressure is there.
Mm-hmm.
It's real, and like you do your best to not give away your best spots, because if somebody goes in and sees a permanent stand, they're either gonna sit in it or they're gonna set up next to it. And you don't know how that person hunts either. You don't know if there's some type of schlub that doesn't give a shit about scent, doesn't give a shit about which way they come in. You know, they could be busting deer out left and right. So
that is true. I've played around with the idea of, you know, putting a stand up there and just taking the climbing sticks away with me. But I don't know. I guess that's just, what's that really going to save me? I guess 5 minutes, you know?
It does, but it also saves you from people trying to steal your stand.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, so I'll probably just hang and hunt every time. Just just like you are. I don't know. I gotta go back and forth with it sometimes.
I mean, I see no reason to not put a permanent setup like that and remove the sticks. I had done it in the past. I've done it in the past and had success. But like I said, I do my best to try and leave the smallest human footprint available. You know.
Yeah, just no signature whatsoever.
Yep.
Yeah, this year I moved last year and I started hunting a new public area. I'm trying to get to know it, but it gets a lot of pressure. And last year is the first year that I've ever had anybody mess with my cameras. I mean, I didn't even hunt the area. I just put cameras out at the end of the season to kind of get to know the area, see what spots are good, what spots are kind of bad. And I stopped getting pictures from a lot of my cameras, and I just figured the batteries went dead or something. I went out there. I put, let's say I put 10 cameras out. 8 of the cameras had either had the antenna taken off, the SD card stolen, or the battery pack thrown away.
Wow.
And I was like,
that's pretty ballsy.
I know. I was like, man. And, you know, as when I got that ride home from my kayaking incident, I was telling he's like, I guess kind of a game warden, but it's like law enforcement for out there. It's kind of some hybrid kind of thing they do. And he's like, yeah, you should tell us, like, you know, we'll try one. But I don't, just the way things are with cameras right now, I don't want to make a big deal about anything like that. You know what I mean? Because it's just going to be so easy. Like, they get so many complaints from people, somebody doing the same thing to them. And they're just be like, well, then nobody should have cameras out here. You know what I mean? And that's what I don't want to happen.
Yeah, you don't want to be the guy that ruins the party for everyone. I get that.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll eat a couple cameras. Taking a loss on like 6 of them to the river kind of sucked, but
oh, in one shot, yeah. I have like 50 or 60 cameras right now, but I only have 8 or 9 cell cameras, but I have like 50 to 60 freaking SD card cameras.
Yeah.
That, as one goes, I just freaking toss it. They're the cheap ones. I've been buying them over the years.
Yeah. Well, I'll give it to Reveal because they did a good job. I called them and I was like, hey, you got any discounts for any idiots that sync all their cameras? And they're like, well, you know, if you got any of them that still work, you know, I had one or don't work, you still have it, you can send it in, we'll, you know, give you, I don't know, well, they gave me the upgrade and then I just paid like a, you know, a smaller fee for it than full price. And then they had 2 refurbished ones that they just gave me. So I was like, well, that's nice of you guys.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Customer loyalty, that's good.
Yeah. So with your SD cameras, are you pulling those throughout the season? Or are you kind of pulling them at the end of the season and kind of creating like a database of historical knowledge for areas? Or do you write that down anywhere and kind of keep that, or how do you implement the information from your cameras for your season?
All right, so what I was doing for years, or I should say a few years there, I was just like carpet bombing with cameras in an area that I'm not really too entirely sure how deer move. For a couple seasons in a row, I'll just like line the area with cameras on heavy use trails, bedding areas, and scrapes, and like hard edges. We're doing super thick, cover and more open wood side right on the hard edge. They're all set cameras, and I will, if I really like the spot, I will not go in there for an entire season. I'll just let the cameras run, and at the end of the season I'll pull all the cameras, I'll collect all the data. Well, what time of day it was, what time, what the weather conditions were that day, what the wind was, what time of the season it was, mark it all down and catalog it. Obviously, which fucks, interest me and such and whatnot. That way I can actually build, they said, a database of things, and I can actually build a history with specific deer. And I did that for a while. And this last season, I wasn't as heavy on the cameras because I hunted 2 areas I actually had a lot of information on already. So I just put my cell cameras out. I put maybe 5 or 6, regular SD cameras out. And I would go in and I would pull those cameras as I hunted the area. That's the only time I'd pull them. I wouldn't go in on a weekend and check it or anything like that. I would just go in, the day I hunted, pull the camera, see what was moving about and what time, and take that information down in my head.
Yeah. So are you creating an Excel, like a spreadsheet, or are you just writing it down in a notebook, or how are you keeping that information?
I have everything saved on my laptop on an external hard drive. I have thousands upon thousands of pictures on that thing, and I have it all cataloged by obviously the spots they're in, and then in a separate notebook I write down obviously the date, the time, the weather conditions, the wind direction, and go from there. And this spot, one spot that really intrigues me that I'm going to be focusing on usually pops off around October 20th.
Mhm.
So, and that's been pretty consistent for the last, several years. So I have that spot marked down, and and by building a wealth of information and data on that, you can actually see, tell what specific areas when the does are, really popping off, or when, does are coming into estrus, because you'll see the activity pick up. And by doing that, you get a few years of data, and you can say, okay, it's consistent. This place pops off around October 20th. This place pops off, second week of the season. This is the third week of the season. That way, you don't really have to waste a lot of time sitting in those areas until that week comes up. You know what I mean? You're not wasting any sits, and you can sit back, and you're not educating deer by going in there constantly. So you already know, okay, going ahead in the season, this area pops off around October 20th. I'm not going in there until then. That way, I leave that area completely unmolested, unpressured. Everything's going to be fresh as a daisy for you to go in there. And like you said earlier, majority of the time, the first sit is the best sit. So why not make my first sit the best sit, during a time when I know they're going to be there.
Right.
So.
Well, I like that. I also find I started, kind of keeping something very similar to you. As long as the deer doesn't get shot or anything, I see them show up almost to the day in the same areas at some spots. The buck will be back. So it's almost like, I'd like to do an experiment one year where I just, as I get trail camera pictures this year, put it on a calendar for next year, and then hunt that spot the next year on that day, and kind of see what you see.
Yeah, within like a day or two, usually.
Yeah.
Allegedly they come back around that same time frame.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's dependent things, different foods, and all the factors,
There's so many different or I should say, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Variables.
Yeah.
There's so many different variables that come into play in a situation like that. It's hard to keep track. But generally, they do say they come around the same time of year.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I bumped into the same buck the last 3 seasons during the same week. So a lot of people, they give me shit for it, and I really don't care what the fuck they think.
Yeah.
But they're like, well, how do you know that deer's that age? Because last year I had I had a buck that was 7.5. I had a deer that was 8.5 and a deer that was 9.5. Well, how do you know they're that old? Well, I've been, having cameras out in those areas for that many years. Yeah. I've been following this deer along. So I could go back years and find pictures of this deer, from when, 3.5 all the way to now. So obviously I know how old it is.
Mm-hmm.
But, seeing them and getting them on camera, and getting a pattern down, or, even just seeing them in the wilderness, sit up, it's actually killing them,
Right. Yeah, exactly. I did want to try one thing this year, and I don't know how I'm going to implement this, but I've heard other people talk about this, but I've seen the last few years on my cameras of like the one-off mid-October big buck daylighting that you haven't seen before, that seems like he's just exploring where his range or something like that. Like he's just out seeing where he's going to go when it's the rut. And I've seen that on a few big bucks where you just like October 15th and this giant's just walking around in the middle of the day for like no reason in an area you've never seen him before, you know?
Now, see, I see that in up here. I've seen that in September.
Okay.
All right. So I don't know if it's like a test run of where they're going to be cruising or where they're just going to be, or they're going to be cruising where they're finding doe groups and just mentally noting, okay, there's a pocket of doe here, there's a pocket of doe here, there's a pocket of doe here.
It seems like that's it, doesn't it? Because it seems like there's no other reason for it. Because it's just like so random and it's not, it's almost like there's no pattern to it. And then I hardly ever see them again until probably the rut, you know?
I didn't notice that until 2021 and 2022 on my cameras. I was getting like the first week or two of September, I got all these bucks fresh out of velvet. They were, very nice deer, 4.5 years old or older. And they just come through in September. I get all excited and then boom. They're nowhere to be found the first day of hunting season, the first 2 weeks of October, and then boom, they show up in November. I'm like, oh, okay. So maybe this isn't necessarily their home range, but it is their rut range, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It certainly seems like that. Or even that, it seems like, I've also kind of looked at stuff like, I was listening to the guy that, Dr. Strickland the other day, on another podcast, and he was saying that deer's home range is roughly about 200 acres, and it pretty much stays that the whole season. But in the rut, that's more it's a more of a vertical, you know what I mean? Like it's a longer distance from A to B instead of just kind of like a 200-acre circle of their home spot, So that's why. So that's
a lot of factors into is how many doe are in that 200-acre circle too. Because if you have a good buck doe ratio, like I said, if you have a really warped buck doe ratio, say you have like Pennsylvania in a lot of areas, I mean, they're trying to hammer the doe down here, which is good. But say you have like 16 doe to every buck. If you have that buck doesn't have to leave that 200-acre little core area you're saying he has, because why? He has all those doe in that area. So why even, why get up and move?
Yeah.
Now, when you narrow that doe down, the doe population, buck to doe ratio, okay, say it's 5-1, which is very good. That buck can breed those does pretty quick because, obviously he can't breed them all at once. So you got other bucks going to breed the rest of the does. So all those does are going to be used up by the time he's ready to go. He's going to go, okay, now I have to go outside my core area. So he's going to be moving more in daylight and moving longer distances. So
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. If there's too many does, then he could not even breed them all and the season would be over, and still be in the same little area that they never have to leave.
Exactly. So, that's you have to bring up the buck doe ratio, in your head too. Okay. I have a fairly large group of doe here, what's the reality? He's going to breed them all. Is he going to be out cruising further away? You got to also take into account when those doe are going to come in heat. Some may come in later than others. You got to figure out there's fawns. They won't come into heat until they're 75 pounds. So depending on when those fawns were dropped, they may not come in till the end of November, early December. So it's, there's a lot of different variables that come into it. I've seen bucks already on camera. I have one I called the Weezer from 2 seasons ago. I have him snort wheezing on camera at another buck. I have him 5 miles from where I was getting him consistently on camera during the rut.
Man, that's crazy.
So it's in the rut. It's all bets are off. And one thing I realized too, especially hunting one of my favorite areas, is I'm not worried about busting deer out in the dark during the rut anymore.
Yeah, I'm
really not. I usually get in probably anywhere from 90 minutes to an hour before light. I get up in my stand. And going into the dark, I'm sitting there. I bumped a bunch of deer in the dark. I'm setting up my sticks, getting into my stand, and I have bucks cruising right past me, 5-10 yards grunting in the dark. And I get up in my stand and I see deer all day. You know, it's the rut. All bets are off. Anything can happen.
It really is, because I hunt an area that has a very, very high concentration of deer. Like there's deer everywhere. So it kind of is an interesting test bed for me, because it's very controlled. It has an extreme amount of hunting pressure. You're not allowed to use any cameras and stuff like that. You're not allowed to leave anything. But there's a couple things that I've learned from just hunting this kind of unique area, is that, yeah, in the rut, you know, a lot of it is just right time and right place, because I'll be, you know, out standing in my truck at 90 minutes before. They also have a rule how early you can go in. I'll be standing there waiting for the 90 minutes to walk in, and just have bucks walking by me by my truck, you know, just grunting, you know, tongue out, just looking for our doe. And it's like, that buck could care less about me right now. You know what I mean? He's just on the next thing.
Exactly. So that's, like I said, when it comes time for the rut, I am really not worried about busting deer out in the dark. Mm-hmm. And that's where, again, a lot comes into play in the fact that all the information you gather for years, and knowing when that a lot of the does in that area, you know, pop off at, so that you don't waste your time until that time, you know, it's just when it gets hot.
Yeah.
So it's more of a precise strike, you know?
Right. Yeah. And another thing that I kind of taken in, it's kind of a different view. Does it go against like first sit, best sit, or like anything that you're saying? Because we both agree on all that stuff. But I've heard a lot of stuff of, you know, if you go in here, you're going to bust this buck out or whatever. And the area I hunt, every area is taken up. And I saw this giant buck in the summer when I was glassing a soybean field. Season started. He was killed mid-October, and the place only gets 2 days of rest a week. And other than that, every area is filled with hunters every single day. And that buck was killed at the end of October, like less than a quarter mile from where I saw him. So he had been having engagements with hunters like every day, and he didn't bust out and go to private and, like, you know, find some safe spot. He just, you know, for how many ever years he was there, he just learned how to avoid hunters in the same area, you know, just get around them and until his luck was up, you know?
Mm-hmm. I mean, in our area up here, what I've noticed is when the pressure hits and the changeover happens, people say, oh, they went nocturnal. And I don't believe in that bullshit, you know? Right. I believe, and what I've noticed, you know, via my cameras, is that buck is just going to go away from the pressure. It's going to go further and further. It's still going to use the same route. Mm-hmm. It's still going to come down to the same areas. It's going to be feeding and whatnot, but it's just going to take a lot longer to get there because that deer is bedding further away from the pressure. So by the time he gets to your camera, now it's dark. So you're thinking, oh my God, he's nocturnal now. Well, no, he just moved further back and it's taking him longer to get down there.
Yeah, and I think that combined with that, they find better places to bed that you can't really get that close to him without him seeing or smelling you with the, you know, defenses. And then when he gets up and starts on his way, I think they do a lot more meandering, you know, like just kind of like loafing around, just kind of waiting, being real cautious, where they're not trying to
100%
from point A to point B. Because
100%.
I've watched a buck come out like mid-season and just like not in a field, like a transition area, you know, before it goes out to a field. I've seen him just stand there and stare at a field for 15 minutes, 20 minutes without like even moving a muscle, you know, just like a statue. And I bet that they do that all the time. I bet that that's not something that's abnormal. Just get out of bed, eat a couple things, stand there for 15 minutes. And, you know, if they're only getting up an hour or two before the evening or whatever, then, you know, that eats up a lot of your chances of your time.
As my buddy Tim says, he goes, you're talking about an animal that knows it's not top of the food chain.
Yeah.
And knows it has predators and knows it's going to be, you know, he goes, they're going to be extra cautious when the pressure's on. So like you said, I've seen them already where they come into an opening in the forest in the woods, where they just stand on the edge of that opening and scan it. And it's not even as big as a field.
Yeah.
That opening may only be so big, and they just stand there and scan and scan and scan and scan and scan. And it may take them, I've seen it where it takes them a half hour to go 20 yards.
Yeah, exactly. Same. I mean, they stand there and look for so long that it's almost like, is there something wrong with that deer? You know what I mean? Because it's just like, not moving, not doing anything. It's like, I can't even imagine what that deer's thinking about right now.
And God forbid you make a noise.
Yeah.
Because they may not pick you immediately, but they know something's not right, and they'll stand there for even longer. And that means you have to stay completely still, because the moment you move, then they got you locked. So, and then you're never going to win that staring contest, because,
Yeah, I agree.
They're undefeated in that crap.
Yeah. I'd really like to get one. Have you had much early season success? I have not, and I'd really like to try to get one early season this year.
Honestly, I can't remember the last time I killed one in early October. To be honest, I don't know if I have. I think most of mine come at the end of October, early November.
Yeah. So
and honestly, I've had early season encounters. There's no doubt about that. But I never had. I was always the guy that tried to play the long game for a long time.
Yeah.
Like just inch my way back towards the bedding throughout the season. And for years, I would only be getting maybe 1 or 2 opportunities at bucks. And that would be my whole season. Then I'd be screwed. But the last couple of years, I've been a lot more aggressive. Because I spread myself out in so many different areas, I had a big, giant, long hit list of different bucks, which is great to have. That way I could be more aggressive and I could go after. So what if I bust a buck out of this area early? If I bust him out of that area, I got a list of 15 more I can go after. So I started making moves a lot earlier, and I did have a lot more encounters, but it doesn't always come together. It's just the way it is. That's why I call it hunting and not killing.
Yeah, exactly. Did you, are you going to do any out-of-state hunting, or are you doing all Pennsylvania this year?
This year's all Pennsylvania, unless if I get lucky enough. Actually, no, I'm going to be going to Maine. But if I get lucky enough and I kill one early in October, I'm going to try and do a run to Ohio the first week in November. And if that happens, if I could, hopefully I could get one knockdown early, go to Ohio, get another one knocked down, and then usually every year I go to Maine the third week of November and try and track. Yeah, I do big woods tracking up there.
I bet that's cold.
It's cold, but at the same time, when you're tracking deer, it's a different style hunting. You're not sitting and waiting for a deer to come. You're trying to get on the freshest track you find in the snow and just go. You're trying to run that deer down before it gets dark out. And trust me, I've picked up tracks already first thing in the morning, and I finally started closing in on the deer and then had to give up the track because it's a half hour before dark. And, you're in the great north woods of Maine, only a mile or two from Canada. You got to make your way back to that truck, and it can get squirrely in those big woods. You got to have your phone charged. You got to have a GPS, a compass. It can get ugly.
Yeah, if something goes wrong, you can actually for real die. You know what I mean? It's
yeah. Like my buddy Tim, not this last year, 3 seasons ago, he was up there. We were all up there, and I ended up with my buddy Brent back at the cabin, and Tim's dad come back, and he said, "Tim didn't come back yet, did he?" I said, "No." And he sent a message from his Garmin InReach. It said non-life threatening injury. It'll take me a little bit, no emergency. It will take me a little bit longer to get back. And we're like, that don't sound good. Maybe he rolled his ankle and he's just, taking it easy, getting back.
Yeah.
So he said, screw it. With those Garmin InReaches, whenever it sends a message, it sends you the GPS location. So I popped it into my Onyx, and we just went right to that spot. And he just started a fire to dry out because he was soaking wet, sweated, because when you're walking through those woods going after deer, you're dressed in wool, and you're getting overheated. His beard was a fucking block of ice. Yeah, and then he's like, "Oh, I would have made it back to town." I'm like, "It's 5 miles, and there's 2 cedar bogs between you and there.
Yeah.
I would have taken my time." Ah, dude, come on.
Yeah. Those Garmin inReaches are awesome.
They are.
I keep one of those on me, like, even turkey hunting, because you just never know. You fall down, break your leg in a creek or something. Like, it's just so awesome to have with you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, we all carry Garmin GPSs up there. Like I said, you have your phone, a charge bank for your phone, and again, if all else fails, you have a compass.
how did you get into that? How'd you start going to Maine?
Well, again, my buddy Tim, he'd been going up there with his father-in-law for 10 years at the time, and then he got me interested in it because he introduced me to the Big Woods Bucks, like social media pages and stuff, and then he got me hooked on. From that, I got hooked onto Hal Blood by him, and Hal Blood has a bunch of books out, and I started reading those, and then me and Tim actually went up to his Big Woods Buck clinic where he teaches you how to track. You know, for 4 days, we were up in the Maine in a drop camp, learning from the man himself, and it is invaluable, you know, lessons you learn from that guy, because again, tracking is so different from what we do down here.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's like, "Oh, you just get on a set of tracks in the snow." Yes and no. I mean, Hal's telling you how to read how old the track is, the size of the track. You know, you can determine what's a buck, what's not. Generally, 99% of the time, you can tell what one's a buck. You know what you're looking for. You know how he goes about it.
That's an invaluable skill that you can just bring with you back anywhere you go too, you know?
Yeah, some of it does translate to Pennsylvania, and some of it doesn't. It is. I tried to do it. I say, the season I went up to Maine, I came back to Pennsylvania, or the next year I came back to Pennsylvania, or I should say, the next year when I was hunting in Pennsylvania, I was trying to use a tracking method around here. It's a lot harder around where I'm at because the woods are much denser. When you're up in the big woods, you're not getting hooked on, you know, you're not going through laurels. You're not going through gigantic patches of briars, green briars and red briars and everything else, blueberry patches. Like, you make 10 times more noise going through the woods here than you up there.
That makes sense.
So, and you know, we don't get the snow that we used to in my area that they do up there. So, I mean, it would work in Pennsylvania in the northern tier counties, the big woods up there. So.
And what about Ohio? Is that a place that you regularly go, or is this going to be like a new adventure for you if you end up going?
I've been hunting Ohio since 2009. I've killed a couple good bucks there. 120s class deer. I've seen some real monsters out there. And about 2020, I killed my biggest PA buck. 2 days later, I'm in Ohio, and I freaking whiffed on a shot. I would say whiffed. I had about 140-inch 10-point coming, big chocolate rack, just beautiful deer, and 23 yards. I took the shot for granted, and he ducked the arrow a little bit, and I hit him right through the tenderloins. So, and that was the last time I was in Ohio, but I have spots out there that, you know, traditionally are, you know, just from hunting them for years, I know the deer are going to be there. It's just a matter of time and time, right situation. You know,
right.
So it's not necessarily a new adventure for me, but, you know, I was going 3 years in a row, and then I stopped for a couple of years, and I went, and then stopped for a couple of years and went. All depends on how the hunting pressure is out there, because for years it got packed with Pennsylvania guys. Like, the cul-de-sac I was staying in and the cabins, everybody was from my county in Pennsylvania. I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah, we get a lot of kids from Pennsylvania come hunt Kentucky too, right? I
was down there.
Go ahead.
I was down there 2 years ago with my buddy Justin Sinan, and we were trying to think of the more western Kentucky. Lichtenfield, I think it is, or something like that.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
I think he lives in a place called Falls of Rough.
Okay. All right.
So that's where he lives. And I was hunting down there with him. Had a good time, saw a deer. I had a nice, mature buck. He was big, giant 6-pointer. Heavy, wide, big wise, small ass brows. And I was there another 2 days. And I had the bow drawn back on him, and I was going to give him it. And I just said, you know what? I got 2 more days. I got to see what else is here. And, of course, I got skunked the next 2 days.
That's how it happens. That's how it happens all the time. You know, what I'm hoping for this year is I'm hoping that the rut isn't so hot again. It seems like the last couple of years, the rut has been so hot.
Sucks, yeah.
Yeah.
You get those 70-degree days, and it's not necessarily that the rut doesn't happen. It's just it happens at night when it's cooler. So
yeah,
you know,
exactly. I see that on my cameras too, because when the rut comes around, I'll switch into video mode, and you know, I'll go out and sit all day and see nothing, see a deer, you know, and then I'll go back in the same time frame and look at my cameras, and when I actually pull the cards and watch the videos, you just see deer in the middle of the night when that's the coolest part of the night, just running by, you know, just obviously doing this route stuff, you know. Yeah, so
hell of a thing, man.
yeah, I put in for Kansas again this year. I didn't get drawn though, so maybe next year. And then I always get a preference point for Iowa, and I would have had 5 points this year. And I put the dates in my phone from last year when you could buy preference points, and they changed it by 2 days, and so I missed the preference points thing. Well, I missed a whole year, which sucks.
I got 6 points right now. Wishing in a bank, yeah. So I think I'm gonna wait for one of my buddies to catch up in points so we can go out together. What I'm going to do is I have an area I picked out that I'm gonna go out there and hunt. And I'm going to go out probably...
You out public?
And yeah, I'm probably going to go out there in like March, April, whenever the snow's off the ground, and do my scouting then. And then go back out in the fall, probably end of October. I'm not going to go out in November because every non-state guy is going to be out, you know, non-resident guy is going to be out there hunting.
Yeah.
On top of everybody that's already hunting out there. So I'm going to try and head out the last week of October. Last week of October, they're just beginning to bop around. You respond to calls and everything. I think I have a better chance doing that. Yeah,
that's a good plan. I go back and forth on what I want to do when I finally get my Iowa draw, because it's like I love like the public land grind. I love, you know, even if you don't kill as big of a deer, like I think I get more like satisfaction of like just like mission accomplished of like how much hard work you put in and stuff. But then I go with like, yeah, maybe it'd be nice to get an outfitter, or maybe it'd be nice to get a lease. I mean, you did wait 6 years for this, or 7 years, you know, for this opportunity. So
yeah,
it's gonna be another 6 or 7 years before you draw it again.
Yep.
So
my brother went out to Illinois last year and he killed a 160. I think the second day of his trip, yeah, he got a dandy, real tall, not super wide, but the mass, the tie length, and the actual curl of the main beam was really long as shit. So
yeah, well, I go to Illinois a lot now, and I was actually looking at hunting in Illinois, but it's so difficult. Like, well, the part of Illinois I go to, it seems like there's not much public land, and if there is, the rules are very restrictive, and people say that it's packed. So that's good on him. Was he on public or was he on private?
No, he met a guy that has property out there through my brother's daughter is an archery, you know, phenom. So she goes around the country. He takes her around the country to shoot archery tournaments, and he met this guy through that whole system. And they got to talking. The guy invited him out, was it 2 seasons ago? And my brother saw some massive deer out there, but never got a shot. And this past season, he went in there and, you know, I think it was the second hunt of the trip, and he got lucky. So,
oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, these states that don't have much public land, that's the way to go. Is like you just gotta luck out and meet somebody, right? That just gives you the opportunity to just hunt their land.
Yep.
What I did, I was telling you that I was going to meet with that farmer. I'm going to do that next week now. But I've tried it a couple years with almost no successes. I write up a little letter with a bio about myself and like who I am, and I like put a picture, and it's like I only bow hunt, and I only kill one deer unless you want me to kill some does for you or whatever. And I find farms on a map, just all over within an hour of my house, and I send out 30, 40 letters every year. Never had any success. I've had a lot of people call me back to tell me no, which is nice, I guess. I don't know, or like
I'd say it's respectful.
Yeah, I liked your letter, but no, like okay, thank you. Well, I actually had a guy call me last night, and he's like, hey, my mom got this letter. Yeah, we do allow a little bit of hunting. Our family gun hunts during the rut, but why don't you come out and meet the family and we'll see what we can do. So I was like, okay. And to be honest with you, like I had sent so many letters that I couldn't remember the property, and then I got in and looked up the name, and it's like a 550 acre farm. So I was like, whoa, I was like, man, I was like, but it's broken up into like, there's like 2 or 3. So I don't know if he's going to be like, yeah, you can hunt this little section over here, or like you can hunt the main one that's like 400 acres or whatever, or even if he gives me permission, I don't know. Cause he wants me to come meet him, his mom and his brother. So I don't know, but that's the most success I've ever had with trying to get permission.
Yeah. So the only thing you can do is go and see.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I'm for sure gonna, I mean, yeah. So
I haven't hunted private in quite some time. I have access to 400 acres if I want. I just, my family hunts it, and I'm not too keen on how they hunt sometimes, because they like to hunt they used to like to hunt my spots when I wasn't there and not tell me about it. So I kind of got a little bit upset about that, and that's when I was like, all right, I'm taking all my stuff off the property and I'm gonna go hunt public from now on.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many positives. And I go back and forth every year. Like one year I got a lease and I was like, I should just go back to public. Public was better than this. And then the next year I went back and hunted public, and like, every time I went out, like somebody would walk in on me, or like people were doing something stupid, and it's like, oh yeah, that's why I don't like this, or like whatever. But it is nice just having, like, if you can get like a big enough piece of public, just like room to maneuver, so it's just kind of
yeah, it's all about where. A lot of the public I hunted this year, the one state game lands I hunted this year, I didn't have anybody bump into me during archery season up there. On my way down, I ran into people, and actually really surprising, coming into the parking lot one morning during the rut. I usually get into the parking lot 4:00 in the morning, and I'm hiking about 3.3 miles up the mountain. So I'm just dressed in my base layer skivvies or my underwear and a t-shirt.
Yeah.
And I walk up the mountain with all my stuff packed on my back. Well, I see another truck. I'm like, who is beating me here?
Yeah.
And I walk by and I say to the person there, like with their back turned, I go, long walk ahead of you. And they turn around and said, yeah. I'm like, holy shit, it's a chick.
Oh yeah.
And I just started clapping my hands. They're like, good for you, sister.
Yeah.
Like we walked together all the way to the mountain. She freaking busted her ass. She actually was hunting an area I used to hunt, which was a little bit further down from me. But she was ulting it up there just as fast as I was. So, I was impressed. I'm like, there should be more like you.
Yeah, for real. Well, one thing that's nice that I think that I'm going to try to capitalize on this year is, like, I'm going to try to hunt more October, because at least where I am, it's like public land. I almost have wherever I hunt to myself in October. I mean, I'll like wait for the rut, and then once first week of November hits, you start getting trucks like it at every pull-in, at every gate and whatever. But I go out there in October, and I pretty much got the pick of the litter of wherever I want to hunt, especially if it's a weekday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to do that more this year.
do your best to get close to bedding and make moves early and fast.
Yeah.
If you have it all to yourself, get close to bedding early, make those moves fast. And because, like I said, before the pressure hits them, you have a really excellent chance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The only thing that I have difficulty with is like, the one place that I was hunting like that, was very hilly, and it's just kind of trying to like maneuver in with, just how I'm getting in there undetected in the hills when you have to travel so far and then not being seen, heard, or smelled, it's like, some of the swirling winds in the hills and just like how loud it can be and stuff,
I get that 100%. I said, I've been dealing with that my whole life up here.
Yeah.
I said where I hunt is old reclaimed mine grounds. So, you have mountains, but a lot of those mountains have been cleared, stripped, mined, and grown, and then re-cleared, stripped, and remined again. So you have a lot of man-made like land features. You'll have these giant overgrown spill banks and deep trenches and pits and holes and vent shafts. So the wind is always doing, like I said, it's doing parkour, off of everything. So trying to actually find a wind to get into the place, your best bet is to just find a spot, go in, and hope for the best. A lot of scenarios. A lot of times you just can't overthink it. You just got to shut the fuck up and hunt.
Yeah, you just got to give it a try.
Yep, and just pray the wind is with you in that situation and it doesn't swirl.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Yeah. I think, I honestly think that like, hill country, big woods deer hunting is probably the hardest deer hunting there is.
I can agree. I can agree to that for sure.
Yeah.
Because like we said, there's so many different factors, so many different things that come into play.
Mm-hmm. And just like you were talking about earlier with mass crop, it's like, well, these acorns are hidden right now. And then next week when I actually, get off work, go to my job, it's a different tree, 5 acres away. That's the hot feed tree,
Yep. And where I'm hunting, it's not necessarily, I said, there is no real ags where in some of the spots I hunt, it's okay. Where are they feeding at this day or this week? There's no strict bedding to feeding pattern. So
exactly,
they can bed wherever they want because it's so thick where I hunt. So, at times you just got to get out of your own head and say, shut the fuck up and hunt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just go do it. Just be like,
let's stop overthinking it.
Yeah. Yeah. Stop overthinking it. And like, I think my big thing is just like staying motivated and not getting burnt out throughout the season, just like, just grinding.
Absolutely. I've been there, honestly, I took a more relaxed approach last season, and I'm even more relaxed this season because I felt myself burning myself out. I was turning it into something that was driving me nuts more than I was getting enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, it's like you turn it into work, like a full-time job, and you're not getting anything out of it. You know what I mean? It's not paying your mortgage. You're just going out to kill a deer and like have fun, and you just take all the fun out of it. Really, when you take it too seriously.
Yeah. I started getting that vibe, and I was like, all right, maybe I got to lay off the throttle a little bit, and learn to have fun again. And when I learn to have fun again, when that situation happens and I do shoot, a good deer, I'll enjoy it that much more.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll be respectful of your time here. We've been on for a while now. Where able to look up your stuff, man?
Yeah, you can look me up on Instagram or on Facebook, Anthracite Antler Addicts. And I even have a few videos on YouTube, not too many, but they're there. There's comic relief in those if you want to watch them as well.
Okay, it's good talking to you again, man. Hey, let's shoot for you want to talk again like October or mid-October sometime? We'll see how the season's going.
Sounds good to me, man. I'll give you an update.
Okay, cool. All right. Thanks for calling, man.
All right, man. Take care, buddy.
Bye.